Am I live? Yes, I'm live. Okay. I had a bit of problem this morning with Facebook and everything, so I had to reinvent myself with a new page. Heike Recreates and Heike Jenkins, because the others had been hacked. Stuff happens. I started reading The Squaw's Teepees by Joan Grant. It's a far memory book. Joan Grant was a writer and she was able to recall her far memories from previous lives. She was born in 1907, she died in 1989, and she describes the life of Piyanah. She was Piyanah, and Raki is her cousin. And the two of them are now, as their mother has passed away, and they are at a tribe which is ruled by Nakachik, who is the father of Piyanah. They have to spend time in the opposite sexes' encampments. And Raki was just telling her where he got the second tooth for his, what do they call it, like a belt. So he told about Piyanah, who he had helped, and then Piyanah asks him, and the second tooth? Her name is Rakina. She fell and hurt her leg when she was 6, and now she's 15 and still crippled. She hardly ever spoke, just lay staring at the roof or else fingered a necklace. Berries, they must have been, but now so old and wrinkled that they have lost their color. I knew they must have some special value for her by the way she touched them, and when she thought anyone was watching, she hid them away. Making friends with her was like taming a chipmunk. She was so timid. I think the others grudged helping her. She can't even crawl to the scavenger pit or fetch her food. For when they saw that I always took her food bowl to the cooking pot, they left her to me. I knew she really trusted me when she no longer hid her necklace, and at last she told me why it meant so much to her. And while Raki told me Rakina's story, I felt as though I was hearing her speak. I, Rakina, have not always been held in contempt by the great hunters. When I was little, your mother used to let me play with you, and she told me not to believe my grandmother's stories about demons who are always waiting to punish disobedient children. You were never wrapped in the bandages which the other babies wore to protect them from jealous spirits who live in barren trees, but you lay naked and laughing in the sun. She said you were different from other children, and that I would be different too. One day I wanted to make a necklace, so I went to the high pasture to search for berries. I found some red and smooth and beautiful, and then I saw others which were even more brilliant. But they were on a creeper, which was growing up a dead tree. My grandmother had told me that it was dangerous to climb a dead tree. It was like disturbing a grave, for in the tree spirit was buried. But I was proud of not believing her story, so I climbed the tree. I got 3 of the berries. They found them still clutched in my hand after I fell. You see, I had forgotten that a chief's woman is honored by the spirits, and so need not to fear them, but Rakina was only an ordinary little girl who made them angry. They must have been very angry, Raki, for they have left me lying here for so many summers and autumns and winters. Even the great hunters have no pity for me, for though I have twice dragged my body out into the snow, they have told Nonna to fetch me back before I was quite dead. Now there's only this necklace to link me with a girl who was not afraid of trees. Sometimes, when I hold it, the berries are not withered anymore, and I'm no longer lame. I'm the girl who was free of the high pasture. My legs can run fast, and my feet know the kindliness of moss, and the coolness of shadowed stones on a hot day. Then she looked up at me and said, "You took more than milk from the woman who suckled you, Raki. You took into yourself her power of taking fear away. For while I was talking, I had almost forgotten that I'm being punished, and that a squaw must always feel humble to the spirits as well as to men. Oh, Raki, I said, I wish we had our own tribe now, so that she wouldn't have to lie there for 7 years before we can take her away with us. Can we do anything to make her leg better? We must try, because I know the old women have got salves, but they pretend it is useless to do anything when the spirits are angry. What does her leg look like? She wouldn't let me see it until yesterday. She was too ashamed until I made her believe that it was not a punishment. It was wrapped in some kind of bandage they use for their newborn babies, the ones that have been soaked in water from the underground lake, which they think will blind evil spirits. I had to cut the bandages off with my knife, for it was too stiff with dirt to unwind. She'd had it on for a long time. When I saw her leg, I knew that squaws can be braver than warriors. There were sores on it, Piyanah, old sores where the scabs were ready to fall off, and open sores, crusted with yellow. The leg is so thin that the foot looks like a bird's claw, but it is not deformed. Dorok has a jar of salve in his teepee. Takini had some of it put on his arm only 3 days ago. I can get some tonight, while they are all having the sunset meal. If we hurry, Raki, I can get it before the others return. The loose shale of the moraine was already covered with the thin snow, but soon we each found the root of the plant we needed. We saw some boys in the distance, but they were too far away to recognize us. Instead of descending by the watercourse, we decided to take a quicker way down, and as we dared not risk being seen together, Raki went on ahead, having said that he would wait for me in the wood above the boys' encampment. When I joined him, he told me that as the place seemed deserted, he thought it would be safest for me to go openly to Dorok's teepee, so that if he were there, I could say I had something to give him, the plant which showed I had done the allotted climb. The teepee was empty. At first I could not see the jar, for it had been sunk in the ground to protect it. The mouth was covered by a bladder, and while I was trying to undo the thong which held it in place, my heart beat so loudly that I was afraid of not hearing Dorok if he came back, for I knew how severe the punishment for theft is. The jar was half full of pungent green salve, thicker than bear's grease. I looked around for something to scoop it up in. There was nothing There was nothing I dared take, so I fetched my food bowl. Though its absence would be difficult to explain at the next meal, I crossed the clearing without being seen. A few paces between the teepees seemed longer than a day's run. I took a handful of salve and then tied it on the bladder, wishing that I had taken more care to notice exactly how the thong had been knotted. When I rejoined Raki, I asked him whether I could come with him to see Rakina. No, there are sure to be other women there at this time. I'll manage somehow to see you tomorrow, or the next day, to tell you what happened. Then he noticed the bowl and said quickly, "Why did you bring it in this? It is your own?" "Yes, I couldn't find anything else." "But you will need it tonight." "I'll make some excuse. I can say I broke it and forgot that I ought to have kept the pieces." "You can't do that, or they will make you miss a day's food to help you to remember. I know that's true, for it happened to me. There are some broken pots behind the cooking place. I'll put the salve in one of them, and bring back your bowl. Don't wait for me in case it makes them suspicious. When you find the bowl, you will know I've hidden the salve. It will be a way of saying good night to each other." Outside Dorok's teepee, there were some boys waiting to give him their plants. If I had not been busy with the salve, Raki and I would have been the first to get back, but Rakina was much more important than annoying the boys. When I went into the teepee, it was difficult not to look at the jar to make sure that I had put the cover on straight. The food bowl was lying at the foot of a pine tree, and as I picked it up, I whispered good night to Raki. It was 3 days before I had a chance to tell before he had a chance to tell me more about Rakina. To find out if the salve hurt her, he said, I rubbed some of it into a cut on my thigh. It was fiery as a hornet. I decided that if I could make Rakina think of it as a test of courage instead of yet another punishment, it would be easier for her to stand the pain. So before fetching the salve, I had hidden it under my blanket. I told her about the oracle by fire. Her leg must have felt as if it was being roasted in hot ashes, but instead of crying out, she suddenly went rigid, with her eyes wide open, though I knew she didn't see me. Then she began to speak. The words were quite distinct, but they sounded as though she was far away. I am no longer Rakina. I am not a squaw. I'm not a cripple. I'm a man who will soon wear the scarlet feather in his forehead thong. I've scorned the anger of winter and mocked the torrid heat. I have fought for my tribe, yet when the arrow of an enemy entered my body, it could not harm me, for I was beloved of the spirit. They caused my clean flesh to heal without a scar. I am not afraid of pain, for even if it comes when I'm very tired, I savor it as though it were good smoke. The tribe has gathered to see me win the scarlet, which will make me a brother of the fire. Suddenly the power seemed to go out of her. She began to tremble and gave little whimpering moans. She shut her eyes, and before she opened them again, I had covered up her leg and hidden the salve. She thought she had been asleep, for she said, I had a dream, Raki, a dream in which I wasn't afraid. The spirits were not angry. I was clean. I can't remember any more, but I know that the spirits no longer hate me. Then she said, my leg hurts, but it's not a dirty, great pain. It's like a flame or a shining arrowhead. I watched her, and when she went to sleep, she was smiling. I had never seen her smile except when she made her lips curve to hide her sorrow. The sores on Rakina's leg were slow in healing, but by the early spring, clean skin had grown over the raw flesh. I had told Raki that when one of the boys who shared my teepee had torn the muscle of his arm, Dorok had made him rub it with fish oil. Squaws made the fish oil, so Raki was able to get plenty for her. It seemed to help her foot to become more supple, and soon she was able to move her knee joint. Until Raki looked after her, she must have been half-starved, but now it was always the best pieces which went into her food bowl. As she grew stronger, we decided that as soon as the sun had real warmth, he would carry her every day into the open air. But when Nonna found out he intended to do so, she forbade him to take her out of the teepee. I have never seen Nonna so angry, said Raki. She shouted at me, it will offend the spirits if they see that one who has angered them is given shelter in a teepee, in our teepee. We have hidden her from them. Is that not enough? Must you bring down thunder on our heads or make the trees fall when we walk under them? Why should we all suffer because of the lame one? I told her that she was a foolish old woman, which annoyed her exceedingly, especially as the other women had gathered to listen to our quarrel. They enjoyed seeing Nonna defied, until she said that the spirits would revenge themselves on all the squaws. She would either return barren from the woods or else have babies too weak to suck. There seemed to be no end to the evils which she promised. Snakes hiding in the woodpile, fish stinking before they reached the cooking pot, corn blighted so that we all starved. Most of the squaws began by being scornful, but she scattered her fear amongst them until they began echoing, Rakina must stay hidden or the spirits will be angry with us. Why should we suffer for Rakina? Then I got angry and shouted, Rakina will not stay in the teepee unless it is by the command of the chief. I will ask him to decide between us. And I strode off towards the great teepee, leaving them staring after me in horror. They had got so used to me that most of them had forgotten that I'm not a squaw who would never dare to expect a hearing from the chief. What did Nakachik say to you? I forgot to give him the squaw's sign in greeting, but he didn't seem to mind. He said it was better that I should fight against superstition than against enemy braves, for it was more dangerous to the tribe. I even told him how you stole the salve from Dorop, and I think he was pleased, though of course he didn't show it. Then he must realize that we still see each other. I think he knew that already, just as he knew we were in a little valley. And can Rokina leave the teepee? Yes, and I could see he was angry with Nonna. He said, if the sun makes Rokina strong, that in itself will be a great thing, but a greater will be there if the other squaws see that the words of the old women cannot be trusted when they speak of the unseen. When you and Piyanah rule together, women, if they have proved themselves worthy of a feather, shall belong to the council, but while they are shackled by legends, whose true meaning has been forgotten, it is well that they should be confounded out of their own mouths. I thought it might be a good opportunity to tell him what a bad influence the old women have on the younger ones, but I suppose he thought he had agreed with me enough already, for he said coldly, the old women know many things which the young should be glad to receive. They know how to ease a woman when she brings forth a child, how food should be prepared, so that the skill of the hunters is used to the best advantage. They can make oils and weave, embroider and dress hides. You will find that there is much for Raki to learn from them. So that was the end of the chapter about the squaws, and the next chapter is the quarry. Happy Sunday.